And welcome to today's program. Michael Irwin here, and I'm about helping you to be able to fast track your leadership development. And firstly, just a little bit about me, very small amount. Firstly, I love sport. I'm based in Melbourne, as you can see there from one of the photos, that I'm a Collingwood member. So I had a really good year last year with us winning the premiership. This year's gone off track a little bit, though not quite so good. I still love my sport. Also, dancing just recently. I do a bit of running to keep fit. And the bottom picture you can see there with the large group is just an example of one of the many, many leadership programs that I have run over the last 15 years. Before that, I had nearly 20 years in. But what's really become my purpose and my passion is to be able to help people to develop as leaders and then help leaders to create a better world and a better environment for others. Because what I find is that when we've got effective, engaging leaders, we've got happy people and happy teams, and that's a great way to have a positive influence on organisations right throughout the world of all different types. So a little bit about me. I became a manager in my late 20s. I was the one who was the best performer and been in the role the longest. Didn't have much just training. I was just thrown in the deep ends, give it a go, see how it all goes. And I slowly improved by trial and error, although I thought I was doing a lot better than I actually was. And I worked long hours and I was getting pretty good results, sometimes very good results, okay? But what I found out after I got some leadership training and coaching was that there was a lot of things that I could have been doing much better. Yes, is there someone that wants to ask a question? Feel free to jump in if you want to ask a question or type into the chat anytime. We'll see if we can, I can answer the questions as we're going along. There's also a question and answer time at the end there. What I found was that after getting that training, I improved way more in less than a year than I had in my previous 7 years of being a manager. And then I got more coaching and training, and I found other people started to ask me about what I was doing to be more effective as the leader and to help them. So that, and coupled with the fact that I was looking after teams right throughout Asia Pacific and around the world, I decided to cut down my travel, and I became a leadership coach about 15 years ago. And I've run leadership training for over 1,500 people, coached individually over 300 managers, and I've helped them, these managers, to work less hours, have a balanced life, get promoted and earn more, hit targets, have a motivated and engaged team, which all leads to an increased job satisfaction. So today what we're talking about is 3 things that you should not do as a leader and what to be able to do instead to be an engaging leader who creates a high-performing team. Okay, and we'll go through here and just start by setting up what's the current state. Why is this important? And lots of people are telling me it's important that the research also clearly tells us. So firstly, Gallup is consistently seeing in their research that 77% of employees are not engaged. So they're not sitting at the engaged or highly engaged state of their research, right? And that has a big impact. But first of all, what we need to know is that the employee's direct manager has by far the most impact. Between 70 and 80% of their engagement score comes from how they're interacting with their direct manager. So when employees are not fully engaged, it's got something to do with, almost certainly, how they're going with their direct manager. Half of all employees feel like they're being micromanaged. And an interesting thing here is that if you ask the managers say, no, I'm not micromanaging. When you ask employees, they say there's lots of micromanaging going on, and micromanaging directly leads to less engagement and lower performance. More research from Leadership IQ shows us that 68% of employees say their managers don't fix frustrations. And we're not talking about huge, massive things here. We're talking about simple things that could be easily fixed, and managers don't go about removing or fixing these frustrations. So these are just some of the examples of what's happening in the current state and how there's opportunity for managers to improve. The key thing I'll get to very soon is none of this is directly the manager's fault. All right, and we'll have a look at that in just a moment. Firstly, what is all of this costing us and organisations? So staff leave, and most of the staff leave because of their manager, either the relationship with the manager or something the manager didn't do, and that's a high cost to organisations. The lower engagement that I've just been talking about is estimated to cost about 20% of employees' salaries. So when people are just cruising along, doing okay, then they're 20% less productive. That's costing you 20% of the salary. Turnover is costing about 150% of employee when there's someone that you would like to have kept and they leave, okay? And that's even higher if it's a high-performing team member or a manager. And then we can go into other things where there's lower engagement, there's higher theft, there's higher levels of industrial action, and these are all costly. There's more absenteeism. So that's not about where people are actually ill or sick or not well. This is about people taking time off because they're not fully engaged and motivated to come to work. And then there's more issues around work cover leading to more payouts and more time associated with handling these issues. So there's a massive cost associated with having average to low levels of engagement and how the managers are working with their current teams. And of course, we want to be able to turn that around. So how did it get to be like this? Right? And this is where it comes in that it's actually most of the time not directly the manager's fault that they're in this situation. So what typically happens, and this happened to me, as I mentioned earlier, is that the best performer or the person that has been in the role longest gets an opportunity to step up into management. That essentially what happens is they get promoted to the manager and they get thrown in the deep end, all right? You know how we do it. You know what we want to be done. I'm here if you need some help. Off you go. Manage the others to do what you do, okay? Unfortunately, that does not work very well because the skills to be a manager and especially an engaging leader are very different from the skills to be able to do the job as an individual contributor. All right. And that puts senior management more and the organization more at risk and leads back to those costs that we were just talking about. And it means just thrown in the deep end, it's highly likely you don't know exactly how to create an engaging environment. Now, the next level is some people get some amount of training. So the organisations say, yes, we can't just throw them in the deep end. We should send them on some courses or give them access to them learning online, which is a great idea. Well, what we find is, and what the research clearly shows, is that managers go to these courses, and I run some of these courses. The content in it is often very good. Sometimes it's good. There's lots of great information out there about how to be an effective, engaging leader. We don't lack information or content or research, okay? Well, what happens is that people go to courses, go to some training, they learn something, they believe they understand it, they go to work, they get overloaded by all of the busyness from work, they try to implement a few things that they learnt. It's not as easy as it sounded in the course, so they just revert back to old habits, trying to deal with it as best that they can. Okay. And this also flows on to having risks from a senior management point of view. You're not going to have as many engaged people. You're more likely to have more internal issues and client issues, and it stops the growth and the succession within the business, which overall then for commercial business means it's of less value. So what we really want is for people to be on the fast track, okay? People to be on the fast track as to getting to be the most effective, engaging leader that they can be. And this means you should have a transition plan. going into that role, from doing to leading, or from transitioning to whichever role you've been to into your current role. And then being able to access proven systems that create high-performing teams. Most organizations don't supply their managers with these tools, okay? And then there's to be ongoing coaching and development, right? So leadership is an ongoing process, and you need to keep developing and using and sharpening your skills as a leader in order to be an effective, engaging leader. But when you do all of this, you've got an engaging leader, you've got a motivated, engaged team, you've got more clear succession, more people able and capable to do more things, which gives you higher retention, gives you more growth, profitability, and a higher business value. So there's lots of positives that unfortunately very few people actually implement that fast track. So let's have a look at what's happening from the leader's point of view. I've done some research myself, checking in with leaders about how they rate themselves. And over 80% of managers rate themselves in terms of looking at a rating out of 10, where 10 is themselves at their best. It's not being perfect. And I get them to imagine, when have they been at their best? That's 10, so it's achievable. Yet most managers rate themselves 3 to 6 out of 10 as to how they're going, okay? And most of these, 96% of these managers want to be 8 to 10 out of 10 every day, yet they don't know how exactly to get there. They haven't got the guidance and support that they need. And research from Neuro Leadership Institute and Leadership IQ supports the fact that only 2 to 3 managers in every 10 have got what they describe themselves as the skills they need to be at their very best and support they need to be at their very best. So it's about how are we going about developing and training these managers, or are these managers asking and pushing to get their own development happening on a more consistent basis? So here's a bit of what it looks like, and you can check in and see, where do you sit along this path? So you've got a group of managers who are describing themselves at maybe 3 to 4 out of 10. And what that looks like is that their confidence is regularly low and they feel like they've got a high workload. They're usually the ones doing a whole lot of the work still themselves, especially the hard, complex things. They don't have enough time to be strategic. They want to develop others, but they don't have time to do that. And they're a little bit worried about their workload and whether that's going to lead to burnout. Okay, so they're not sure where their career is going to take them. Then there's some that describe themselves roughly, 5, 6, 7 out of 10. And what they're usually doing is they're getting a roller coaster of their confidence. Sometimes they feel like they're in a good place, they're doing well, achieving some things, but then other things happen and it drops right off and their confidence goes down. Okay, they may be trying to do some development and implementing things, but they quickly fall back into old habits because they're not finding an effective way of using those skills. Right? And they're still finding that they're extremely busy. They're not creating enough strategic time, not really getting clear about what they should be doing and thinking about from a strategic business point of view. Now, what they describe as being at their best is when they have very high confidence consistently. They're able to engage and empower others so others feel motivated, yet they're still able to hold them accountable. Right? They have time for strategic thinking. They know how to add value strategically to the organization, and they're much more proactive than reactive. So that's where we want the managers to be. And unfortunately, there's a whole bunch of things that get in the way. For example, and please jump in and give me your thoughts and comments. Who here knows some people in their organization as a manager that says to themselves, it's easier to do it myself. If I do it, I know it'll be done right. Right?
Well,
Anyone?
it's given.
Yes.
It's given as a manager when you do it right, but that's not the point of you having a manager. You need to ensure that it's delegated clearly and the team under you are able to deliver it.
That's right. That's And that's what we should be looking to do, is to be able to delegate it. Yet so many people find themselves in the situation as a manager that they fall into these situations where they just think, I'll just do this. It's just easier if I do that. It's just quicker if I do that. Okay. This is some of the areas where people are most certainly sabotaging themselves. You're going to get stuck in a rut if you keep thinking it's easier to do this myself. It's quicker to do it myself. I know if I do it, it'll be done right. Okay. So these are some of the things that are leading into what managers should not do. Leaders should not do. We need to change that around to being the opposite of that. And that's hard for most people, because most people in their management role know and are the best at doing the tasks, right? And they know how to do it right. So that's not easy to be able to let go of that. Okay. So let's look at these other key things that we're talking about here. Do you or your managers protect the team from failing by stepping in to fix the situation, to deal with the issues, to improve the quality of their work? So that's something that's happening. Here's another one. Do you or your managers give your team members answers to all their questions? So whenever people come to you with questions, you give them the answers. You've got all the answers. You know how to do it technically. You've been there for a while. You know a lot of information. Give them all the answers. What about this one? Do you tell your managers, or you as a manager, tell people exactly what they need to do to complete the tasks? You're the person who's been doing this very well for a while, so you know how to do it really well. So do you tell people exactly what they need to do? Again, jump in, please. Type into the chat, jump in and tell me who does some of these things, or who knows people in their organization as a manager that do some of these things.
Yeah, I think I do pretty much all of those specifically with my team. So yeah, definitely keen to keep listening to see what the future holds.
Thanks, Jack. Really appreciate that. And others. Any others there that's feeling that they experienced the same thing, or they've seen this happening?
I think I'm guilty of that as well, especially number one.
Yeah. Okay. Yes. So, and the thing is here, these seem like the right things to do. And number one, if you've got someone who says, like, I care about my team, I want to make sure that we do a good job, then I can jump in and do this. Unfortunately, it doesn't work very well. So we need to stop this from a number of perspectives. Logically, they seem like they are the correct things to do, but they're actually stopping your team from being engaged and from being highly productive. And most organizations don't tell their managers about this. In fact, most organizations put the pressure onto the managers, which makes them feel like they should be doing these things. Right? And if it's not directly told to you, then it is implied that these are probably the things that you should be doing. But if you're focused on real leadership development, these are the things that you would make sure that you do not do. Okay? Because this will lead to your team being less engaged. It will lead to your team being reactive. It'll lead to your team being an okay performing team that relies on you all the time as the manager. You get overloaded. So two things are the outcome if you do this stuff is you will have a team that is okay performing. It's not going to be really low performing. It's also not going to be high performing. And you are going to be the one with the highest workload and taking on all the pressure and stress as the manager. Okay. So this is one of the key things that leads to managers having overwhelm and burnout. And part of this is the up and down element of confidence. And the other part is just the workload itself. And people look at it and say, well, I don't see where my career's going. I'm trying to deal with it. My confidence is up and down. I feel like there's such a huge workload. I'm reactive. Now I'm uncertain about where this takes me for my career. And unfortunately, with this, I have had many people come to me after experiencing this. I just had one last week that I was talking to, that I reached out on LinkedIn, where she said, I'm now stepping back to a lower role without any direct reports because of the overwhelm that she was experiencing as part of being a first-time manager. So we want to avoid that. Okay, we want to be able to set you up for success. All right. So,
sorry, on question on number 2, shouldn't the manager intervene sometimes based on if the situation is critical to give the team members answers to some of the questions? I mean, based on the situation, of course, but not all questions, as you mentioned here.
yes, so definitely not all. Yes, so you're right in the sense there that if the manager notices things aren't going the way that it should, yes, the manager should then step in to an extent. The key part here is the type of conversation that you have, because you want to continue to empower the team member and get the team member to be thinking themselves about what's happened that's not progressing the way that it should, and what are some possible solutions. Okay? And they start to come up with a way to change the situation and a better way to move forward. And then jointly you agree on that way forward. And the reason for this is a very good question. So the reason that we want to go about it that way, where we're having a conversation that's prompting your team members to be thinking and coming up with solutions, is that if you are always the one that giving the answers, then you're training them to come to you with questions, or just to wait until you step in because you notice something is happening and tell them what to do. Right? So that means essentially you're training the team members that if you've got any challenges, I'll fix them as the manager. So the team member learns to just go along, either ask questions and they'll get the answers, or they'll just wait until the manager comes in and says it's not going the way that it should and tells them what to do, and then they'll follow what the manager does. That's not an engaged team member. That's not a team member that's high performing. You want them to be proactive, thinking for themselves. And when they do, they feel trusted, they feel more satisfied in how they're contributing to their role, which is a really important part of high performing team. Does that make sense now?
Yeah, sure. Thank you.
Yep. Great. Any other questions about any of those 3 points? Because for most people, this is a surprise to think that they shouldn't be doing these things. Other questions or thoughts? Is it making sense what I'm saying so far to you? Happy with that?
Yeah, I'm definitely following along. No issues of mine.
Great.
Yep, Michael.
Thank you for that. And thank you for the thumbs up too. All right. So what should you do instead? And I've just given you a little bit of an insight, and we'll keep going with that. So what we want to be able to do is focus on your leadership development and the skills required to create an engaging leadership model and a high-performing team that feels engaged and motivated. So the key areas are for you to develop skills around self-leadership, understanding your own identity, your skills and strengths, and your authentic leadership style, and getting clear on that. Most people don't just define what an effective, authentic leadership style is for them. It's understanding what impacts you and what impact you have on others as part of self-leadership. Then there's about people leadership, and the foundation of this is building trust, right? And then the second part is about letting go. We was just talking about that just a little bit before. It's about the leap is going from doing it yourself to getting other people to do it, okay? And then going up the next level to being able to be strategic and aligning the team and the team within the organization and being able to think strategically so you add value through business acumen to the broader organization. Okay? This develops a much greater sense of value that you're contributing, and it gives you so many more career options going forward. But let's have a look specifically at some things that you need to look at in terms of creating the high-performing team. Okay, so we need to start to think of leadership development as a set of skills. It's not like you can go to a course and then you've learned some information and you'll become a good leader. All right, you have to be continually learning and then implementing the skills that you need to do to be an effective leader. It's similar to doing a hobby, something like a guitar or learning to dance or learning to play tennis. If you want to significantly improve, become quite good at those things, then you need to get some coaching or some lessons, some guidance. You need to keep practicing it. Okay. If you go to a workshop on tennis and look at people playing tennis and maybe even hold the racket and the ball, but it's all in a classroom, and then on the weekend you try and go and play a competitive game, you're not going to be very effective. Right? So it's about thinking about it in the same way. If you want to be really good as a leader, you've got to identify the skills and then develop those skills and keep working on them. All right? And there's a great TED talk about how to get great at something by a surgeon. He actually talks about getting a coach to help him improve in that exact same way. So here's 3 critical steps to help you moving forward and how to be at your very best as a leader, be an engaging leader who creates a high-performing team. And I'll introduce each one, and then I will go through each one in a little bit more detail. And please feel free to jump in with questions. So the first one is to create an environment that's based on trust, a foundation of trust, and is psychologically safe. And now that's a legal requirement as well. The second is to use proven leadership processes. So not doing things ad hoc or trying to just develop them as you're going along, but know what are the proven leadership processes for key things like delegation, effective feedback, difficult conversations, and there are many more. And then get that confidential expert guidance to help you grow and develop so that you can improve these skills on an ongoing basis, just like somebody would if they were looking to learn how to play the guitar or tennis. Okay, you can't do it all on your own. It's a much slower process if you try and do it on your own. So let's look at each of these individually. Creating a team environment that's based on trust and that is psychologically safe. So interestingly, Google did some research with over 10,000 people, initially internally and then externally, and they found that psychological safety was the #1 factor for a high-performing team. So that means that leaders must know how to create trust, to build trust, and to create a psychologically safe environment. And the interesting thing is that most are not sure about how to do that. Most managers think they're building trust, and their intention is definitely to build trust and psychological safety. Yet when we ask their employees, their team members, they don't agree that that trust is being built. Okay. So what employees say is that most of the managers focus on tasks and results. And focusing on tasks and results does not build trust or a psychologically safe environment. Okay, so that means managers have to do some different things in order to build the trust. All right, and one of the key factors that's happening here is that managers don't realize that there's many small actions that chip away at trust and break trust, and it's not an intention again. So one of the most common examples that I give is that when managers book a time to have a one-on-one discussion with one of their team members, and then they turn up late, or they change the time, or they cancel the meeting, then if you do that twice, then you're starting to break trust. And you can use that as a way to think about a whole lot of little things that could be breaking trust. Not intentionally, but that's the way the employees are going to be looking at that. Okay. So I've got a question here. Thank you for what are the best ways to build trust? So some of the key things that we look at are being vulnerable. Okay. So that means opening up, talking about how you're feeling, how you're seeing things from an open and honest point of view. The other thing is really listening well and showing other people that you hear them and that you are interested in them as a person. Right. And then another key factor is about thinking about all of the interactions, such as walking in a meeting to have a one-on-one discussion, and am I following through with that in the way that my team member would expect? Okay. So there's some ways that you can look at building trust. Right. And you've got to reflect and consider what might be the ways that I'm accidentally breaking trust. So there's much more depth around that. We would need to continue that in a different session. So I'll keep going from here, but maybe we can get back to it at the questions at the end. So the next thing to look at is proven leadership processes. Most managers are not given the proven leadership processes. Okay, they deal with situations as they come up, ad hoc. And unfortunately, that doesn't develop your skills. So you're not set up, most managers aren't set up firstly with an opportunity to have these proven processes. And then secondly, they don't put them in place themselves. So they're dealing ad hoc with things as they're going along. And that tends to mean you don't grow with your skills, or it grows very slowly. What you want is something that's already been proven so that you can implement and use that method, that approach. That fast tracks your leadership growth and the engagement performance of your team. So as a quick example, if you were building a house, would you want a builder who just figured things out as they went along, or one that used planned, proven, repeatable processes? Okay. So you want to be able to have repeatable, proven processes for the key things that you need to be doing well as a leader. Here are just some of them: with feedback, delegation, managing conflict, creating high performance, difficult conversations. For example, in terms of giving feedback, should be a specific model that focuses around the fact that you are being specific, that you are talking about behaviors, okay, that you are setting up the context appropriately, that you are giving more positive feedback than constructive feedback. Okay. And things like, well done is not feedback. Thank you, that's an acknowledgement, appreciation, but it's also not feedback. And most managers haven't been given the guidance to understand exactly what effective feedback means and what are the things they need to do that really well, so that they have people feeling good about positive feedback, but they also have people thanking you as the manager for giving constructive feedback, instead of what most people find is that they get people who are defensive when you try and give them constructive feedback. So that would be one example. If you've got a proven process, you're developing the skills, people will thank you for giving constructive feedback rather than get defensive. How would that feel? And then the important part is about growing your skills on an ongoing basis. Okay. As I said earlier, most managers focus on the doing rather than growing. They want to grow. It's about finding the time and the right way to do it. Going off to a course is a good starting point, but for most people, they forget what they have in the course within a few weeks, and they don't effectively implement hardly anything out of the courses, because implementing it is harder to do it in real life with your real challenging situations than it sounds and seems when you're in the course itself. Okay, so you need that support and guidance from someone who's prepared to make the time for you and help you to develop those skills on an ongoing basis. It's like the TED talk that the surgeon said. And you can think about it from the sports point of view. That's something that, you know, I enjoy looking at it from a sports point of view. And how do sports people and teams, we've got the Olympics going on at the moment, get to a personal best? They don't do it on their own. They've all got a team associated with helping them, you know, getting feedback and input from a whole lot of different perspectives to develop what they need to be at your best. And if you want to be at your very best as a leader, that's what you need as well. Okay. One starting point can be for you to write your authentic leadership vision statement. You at your best and most authentic as a leader. What does that look like? And then get an accountability partner to make sure that you're talking about and developing and consistently working on your leadership skills. Okay? And someone that can truly give you some expert guidance and input. So where do you go from here moving forward? If you're like most of the people that have come to these sort of sessions, you have experienced many of the things that we're talking about here. And so there needs to be some changes to get you to be at your best more often. So you have a choice, right? You can leave it to managers or to do it themselves, or you can try and do it yourself as perhaps you have in the past, or you can get some sort of expert help, right? If you don't make the change, what will it cost you? If you burn out, if your managers in your organization burn out or leave, if you've got confidence like a roller coaster going up and down, or you're feeling imposter syndrome, right? If you're experiencing slow growth or promotion, or that's happening within the organization as well. And how will you feel if you're in a similar position in another 2 or 3 years' time, rather than feeling like that you're improving and growing and moving on with your career? What would it be worth to you to fast track your leadership development or the leadership development of your managers who can have consistently high confidence and a high performing and engaged team? The difference when people describe to me being in an engaged team, that they've been somewhere in their life, and being in not an engaged team is such a massive difference in all of their life. And then being able to add strategic value to the organization, which then makes you more valuable and gives you more options in your career. And here's just a couple of examples I'll let you read through there. Some people who have described how they've improved going through this process and the coaching with me and the programs that I have, okay, and how they've been able to significantly improve their leadership effectiveness and create motivated teams and high-performing teams grow in their career. This is an interesting one from Judas. You can see a very intelligent, very educated person. And I just had another one very similarly in the last few weeks. A lady who just finished her MBA last year. But she was asking me very specific questions about how to implement these processes and how to be able to deal with specific situations that she didn't get from the MBA, and that's exactly what Jude described as well. So here's some things you can look at going forward. We have the Engaging Leader Transformation Program, which is an outcome-based program. It's not like course content. Here it is, go to the course, take away your workbook, and they wish you good luck. I stick with you as you become an engaging leader, and support you through that transition. Right. And so the key thing here is that we're looking to get you to be able to be highly confident, highly engaging, highly effective leader across a period of time. And I've been able to put this together now so that it's at a similar cost investment to doing 1 or 2 leadership courses. So you get 12 months worth of support. Okay. So you get to try it out for free as well. And we get to have a one-on-one conversation with me to set it up. And it's about being able to accelerate your leadership development. It's very flexible. And as I said, you get an opportunity to have a one-on-one discussion with me to set it up so that you can create a way to be at your very best. So over to question time now. And I think there's a couple of things. There's a long message in the chat that I hadn't quite got around to reading. Some people have said sorry for leaving and they'll get the recording later, which we'll send through to people. So jump in, please, and what questions do you have after I've just given you all of that information?
Hey, Michael, sorry, mate. My screen froze a little bit. Could we go back one slide just around the available courses and stuff to move forward? Sorry, mate. I didn't quite get to read all through that.
That's all right. This one and the one, I can go back a little bit. That one.
Yeah, okay. Yep, no worries, man. Let's have a quick read of this one. Sorry about that.
No worries at all. Yeah. And if you want me to send out more information about this or book in a chat to have a quick chat and go through it in more detail, happy to do that. I've specifically created something that's very different from the typical training programs, as I've said, because the key element that all of the research is indicating is that leaders, managers need an ongoing support, and that hasn't been developed very well. There is executive coaching one-on-one. That tends to be for the senior part of the organisation, and it's often very expensive. So this has been set up to be much more cost-effective and available for people. Oops. Thank you for those that are saying thank you and leaving. That's all right. Con has got a message in there. I'm just trying to read it as I'm listening to others.
I can jump off mute and I can just talk through it if that's...
Yeah, that'd be great, Con. Thank you.
So yes, well, I guess the thing that I was thinking about as you were talking around not getting enough experience. So you might go do a course and then you've got the role of manager, but your experience, your touch points and those chance to demonstrate those skills and learn them, is limited. And I've always been, I guess, shying away from wanting to lead a large team. I guess a large team in my mind is like more than 6 people. But in light of what you just said, I think one of the insights might be, and I just wanted to run it by you, was that should you actually try and do a bigger team and that you've got more of those touch points so that you can grow as a leader, because then you'll get all the those areas that different variety of different people and situations to lead through. Is that the right insight? Yeah.
Well, there's kind of 2 parts to that. So yes, getting a bigger team gives you a greater opportunity to develop. There's no doubt about that. And there's 3 or 4 layers to that. So when you've got 1, 2, maybe 3 people reporting to you, it's much easier to manage than if you've got 6, 8, 10. And then once you sort of get to, so that requires a step up if you've got 6, 10, 12. And then if you go bigger than that, when you start to get 20, 40, 60, 80, then there's multiple layers associated with it as well. So that adds to the complexity. So what ideally we would have in the fast-tracking people's leadership development is when they've got that smaller number of 3 to 8, they're learning all of the key skills. So they're getting a solid foundation and they're using these proven processes. And then once you get a handle on how to do effective feedback, how to hold people accountable, how to create psychological safety and trust, and you're able to do that with a group of 3 to 8, then you can be more confident about stepping up to more people that you manage. Okay.
That makes sense.
If you haven't got those things in place, and you feel like you're still fairly reactive or mostly reactive with your small group, then what tends to happen is if you take on more responsibility and more staff, is that you create more work for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And that's when I often come in and help people to change that from a one-on-one coaching point of view. That it would be better if they got the right training and development as they were coming through, in the initial stages and with that first level group of people.
Yeah, okay. So it's kind of like, I guess, a skill, like a tiered set of skills. So like going back to your earlier slides about learning to dance or play guitar, if you're trying to do more complicated things than what you're ready for, then you're going to basically run into slowing down and, not being able to achieve and have to make up the work later on.
Yes, that's right. That's what you can run into. So ideally you get an opportunity to solidly develop some of these skills, then you take on a few more people and more responsibilities. You've got a good foundation, you develop them a bit further, and you continue that development as a leader, rather than still trying to do it in that ad hoc trial and error way, but just taking on more responsibility or more people. Because what happens is that if you haven't got all of those things set up and working well, like the proven methodologies and handling your confidence and being able to hold people accountable and empower and engage, then you hit a wall, you hit a point at which you can't progress any further. Okay, the workload builds up, your effectiveness drops, and people get into a situation where they kind of feel a bit stuck. And it's the things that get them out of that is having highly developed leadership skills.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you very much.
Pleasure. Thank you. Great question. Any other questions before we look to wrap up?
I have a question. Thank you, Michael, for your time and taking us through the basic stuff for leadership.
Pleasure. Thanks, Mazen.
Welcome, and thanks for the offering. I have a question. Sometimes, as professionals, we move from an organization to other, and we inherit like a previous or a big team, and we don't know like how to, who's track the maze. Who to depend on. Like you come as a fresh person with experience, but you step into this organization and you don't know your team well. So how to, break the ice, how to start, maybe reduce the resistance as well, if there's some. Thank you.
Yeah, great question. Thanks, Mazen. And this is another good example of the types of things that, as a skill that we want leaders to be able to have as they're developing themselves into engaging effective leaders. So some of the key things here when you're moving into a new role to look at is firstly, don't make too many changes or make very few changes initially and get a sense of what's happening within the team, the individuals, the organization before you start making changes. Okay. I hear a lot of stories about managers coming into new roles and they see ways that things can be improved very quickly and they try and do that straight away. And it tends to make the team a bit defensive. They've been pushed to make these changes quite quickly. What we should be doing with that is looking to understand the personality style and the work style of the team members that we're working with, and also getting to understand their role. How do they understand what their role and responsibilities and outcomes are, and how do they see that they get to achieve that? So you're sort of being curious and interested in them. And that's how you'll get to know and understanding what's happening. And you can build the relationship, you can build respect with them. Okay. And if we look at it in terms of the personality and work style, that's a good example of things where people know there's different personalities, or they've even been to a course. I've got a client that's just started last week, and she said, yeah, I've been through some of those personality things. I remember kind of, what is it again, one bit of it, and I'm not one of them. Anyway, she was struggling to remember. What we should be doing as leaders is as understanding the types of personality and work style that each of our team members have, so that we can help to understand, to communicate and work with them in the best way possible. Okay. And then we should also be having a discussion, literally, where we're saying, let's talk about how we like to work and how can we best work together so that we can maximize the way that we can operate and be much more effective. So there's some of the things to look at when you're coming into a new team. Get to understand the people, get to build those relationships. Don't look to make changes too soon, and get talking to them about how they understand their role and the responsibilities, and what kind of an approach and plan have they got to achieving those. Okay. Unfortunately, in many situations, they don't have some of that stuff. So then it becomes part of your role as the leader to help them to develop that. It also gives you the opportunity to understand what they're actually doing and taking responsibility for as part of their role when you come into a new organization or a new role. I know that's still fairly high level. Mazen, is that helpful? Was there anything more specific that you wanted me to go into?
No, that's helpful. Thank you for the short time. I appreciate it.
Thank you. All right. That's fantastic for all of the people that have stayed on to now. I know there's been a few people that have jumped off and also wanted the recording and some of the slides. I'll send those out in the next little while, next day or so, the recording and some key information. Last chance before we wrap up. Any other thoughts, comments, or questions? Has that given you some things to think about and been helpful for you in thinking about your leadership development?
Yep, definitely on my end, Michael. And yeah, look forward to seeing some more information around what the future could hold, really, in the way of some additional training and things like that. So yeah, wait to see that and have a read. Thank you.
Okay, fantastic. Appreciate that, Jack, and others. So we'll wrap it up there. Thank you again so much for your time, and I look forward to seeing you somewhere in the future, and I'll send out the information about the recording, and maybe I'll see you to have a one-on-one chat at some stage as well. All the best with everything going forward. Thank you again. Bye.
Thanks. Have a nice night.